And we are live. We are live here,
And we
December
are
28th.
live.
How are you,
We're
Bruce?
live. We're live. We're coming to you from all over the place. We can't even tell you. Hidden down in bunkers. World's gone nuts, guys. Nah, actually, one day soon, we may be broadcasting from bunkers. But some funny stuff happened this morning. I hope we're on my normal LinkedIn. LinkedIn was like, we have to verify who you are.
Oh, yeah.
Then I had to select all the things to prove that I'm human, which is really funny. Did you see the meme that Elon Musk put out yesterday, day before?
I'm
How
not
do you,
sure.
I know I'm human because I can select the right boxes or whatever. That's how I felt. And it was so funny because I almost shared that meme like a day before, and Elon
Yeah,
beat me to it.
that's funny.
Ha! You guys are live. Fly Mackie says, "Hey, love the energy. Fly, we love you too, man. And we are doing great things. Boom. Okay, put that out there, guys. Good morning. I know it's 5 a.m. in Texas. We have our normal crew that joins in Texas. I know you guys are building. We're really excited to meet everybody as well. You can reach out to us on X, on Twitter, at Networks Manager. David is at Sir David Porter. And of course, Matt Dixon, who will join us in a couple minutes. MD Trade there on X as well. So a lot of stuff going on, David. I don't know if you noticed yesterday, but there was a huge move on the market near the end of the trading day. It was really across everything. It was across gold. It was across precious metals. It was across stocks. It was across crypto. It was very noticeable. You couldn't not notice it.
Yeah,
Someone or some group knows something.
right.
Yes. And they front ran the heck out of the market.
That's
It's
great.
pretty interesting. Yeah, of course. It's always great. You know what I mean? Especially when you're long. You always love to see that stuff. Front run on the market is good. Um, we have been saying there's a lot going on. There is a lot going on, and as everybody knows, we have the macroeconomic and political, things that are pushing on us are major. We're in theaters of war, and actually, no one's talking about Africa in these places as well. But they're kicking out they kicked out Niger or whatever. Nigeria kicked out France the other day. Russia is actually putting some pretty big moves in the area there in Africa
Yes.
as well. So pretty interesting stuff. I think that we talked about this pump, the Christmas Day pump that we thought would lead through the rest of the year, more than likely, and maybe up to the 10th when we make it the news of the ETF. This is mainly for crypto, but this all could continue. There was a time when people were like, "Well, I'm going to wait for the cost to come down. I'm going to wait for the cost to come down." I don't think the cost is going to come down very much. Okay, I think that basically we're in the point in the collapse of the empire when we're just sharing memes. And no, I'm kidding. We're in the point where the only way out is by printing more money. Like at this point, we're not going to have a quantitative easing or whatever. No, that's where we print more. We're not going to have a reverse. I don't think that's going to happen. Now, to put that into perspective, one way that they do remove currency out of the market, and a lot of people don't know this, but one way that they do that is through the commodities. But we just kind of went through that a lot too. And what they'll do is they'll have the commodities they'll pump the commodities very high, and then they'll drop the price, and then they'll buy the commodities back, and then the money in between that is basically gone from circulation. A lot of people don't understand how that works, and understandably, it can be very tricky to understand how all this stuff works. But but I think we're past that point. I think of course, we may have some, markets go up and they go down, but I don't think if you're waiting for the house to get cheaper, if you're waiting for the car to get cheaper, if you're waiting for Bitcoin to get cheaper, or Global Boost or Litecoin or any of these other ones, XRP, I don't think they're going to get much cheaper in this cycle, at least. Now, they we can move around, okay, and that's where the dollar cost averaging comes in. When the dollar cost average, Matt Dixon talked about that the other day. Very strong strategy, dollar cost average, and you dollar cost average your buys, and then that way you average. And so if you buy, like, okay, you're just buying whatever it is, maybe it's $100 a week, or maybe it's $1,000 a week, or maybe it's $10,000 a week, or whatever you want to do, or maybe it's one Ethereum a month, or maybe it's every few days you buy, and you dollar cost average that buy. And I'll tell you who's done that very successfully as well. I know Matt as well, and I know I keep talking about it. We'll have to bring him on here real shortly, which we always do. But is Bitcoin Ben, my friend. Bitcoin Ben runs one of the most successful shows. I'm going to actually, I'm sure I'm going to come on a show again here shortly, and I want to have him on this show. But 6 a.m. is it's 6 and 5 a.m. is no joke for us here in the U.S. David, you have it easy there in Portugal.
Yes.
How's the weather out there? How is Portugal?
It's going well. Everything seems to be okay. It's a nice place here.
It's not bad, right? It's
Yeah.
It's a nice place, that's for sure. So I'm going to cruise over here, look at something here real quick. Our Dow futures. Let's look at our futures. Our futures are up slightly. Futures Dow. Boom, boom. Pre-market trading. Okay, let's see here. It's not what I wanted. This is what I wanted here. So the Dow futures, I talked about this yesterday. This is a way that I predicted for my own trading the markets a lot. So yesterday, if you noticed, we had, and I don't know if you were on, but when I talked about it, I said the Dow futures were flat. And I said, that's, guys, that's a lot of times that means up, because it's like a manipulative thing, and all markets are manipulated. So it's a very normal thing. The little guys get in trouble for manipulating it. The big guys don't, but all markets are manipulated. And that's the way it works. And, so today we're down 66 points, not much. And again, we have this run up. So I would say, because it started further down and now it's been coming up, it would be interesting if by the end of the show we are back on par, or by the time that they close these, we're back on par. We may have as well have my good friend President Vitt join us in 20 minutes or so. He is the president of Liberland. David, we talked about Liberland. It's a little place in the Danube River between Serbia and Croatia. This guy started his own country. Really, really interesting guy. So we're going to have him join. The other thing I wanted to look at here was some of the other stuff going on. Of course, we have not had a large reaction from President Putin over the ship being bombed. And there were initial reports that ship was bombed by a cruise missile or by the F-16s or something like that. It's unclear, I think, what exactly it was, whether it was an F-16 or whether it was a cruise missile. But one thing seems to be certain, and that it was a new munition or a new way of bombing that they hadn't been doing before. So whether it was an F-16 or was it a cruise missile, that was a big bomb. That was a big blow up, and it absolutely blew up that ship. So, I'm sure some guys were hurt, and we pray for all people. We don't want to see anybody killed or anything like that. So, you have Kim Jong-un overnight as well. He says he's ramping things up in his war machine and the nuclear machine as well. due to unprecedented aggressive actions by the U.S. So, world definitely on fire. Putin is upset. I'm just kind of reading through the stuff here. He said he has ordered revenge raids in Crimea, and we sank the 100 million ship Navaska. I shouldn't even try to pronounce it because I don't know how to say it. So we're going to see a lot of that stuff going on. Of course, same thing heating up there over in Israel, in the Middle East. Everybody's fighting with everybody. Not good. Guys, cooler heads need to prevail. Cooler heads sooner or later will prevail. It's just how many people are going to fall before that. And so we really want to protect life. We want to protect the kids. We want to protect the women. We want to protect life in general. And as we protect life, then, that's the way forward. Because the only way forward is together. And the earth is underpopulated by a lot. Okay? Drive around Pennsylvania. You drive around North Carolina. You drive around Virginia. You drive around these places. There's vast open spaces. How about like Romania and these places? You drive around Romania, it's like big emptiness. Germany too, guys. You go through the backwoods of Germany and everything else. I mean, it's like there's a lot. There's a lot of space, and we need more people. And perhaps the new people that are going to be born are the ones that are going to save us all. And let's face it, we need saving. But meanwhile, as all this goes on, high-risk assets are continuing to climb, and I do think that will continue. And of course, I am me, and I have my way of doing things. And of course, so is David. And then, of course, we have Matt Dixon as well, who brings his experience. Let's go on and bring him in. Let's get his take on what we have going on here.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Morning, David. Morning, Bruce.
Morning, Matt.
Great
Good
to be
morning,
with you
Matt.
again.
Nice to see you again. How is it out there?
Oh, it's cold and it's wet, but yeah, economically things are looking good for UK. We'll touch on that in a moment. I say looking
Nice.
good, not quite yes, but we're always forward looking, aren't we? So it's quite interesting what you're saying about markets. They actually, during bull markets, they climb a wall of worry. It's not as though everything is great out there. There's a lot of warning signs out there, but actually, as I say, the markets climb a wall of worry during bull markets, and that's what's happening right now.
Oh,
But
there
there's, you got me okay?
Yeah, it's you lost it somehow, but you're back. It was only a brief second.
Yeah,
Markets climb a wall of worry, and
yeah, exactly. So they are climbing that wall of worry at the moment, and we'll touch through a couple of the warning signs that are out there. But during the Christmas period, we expect there to be this Christmas New Year rally, and that's exactly what we're experiencing. And we'll look at your favorite Litecoin as our last chart of the day. It's powering ahead, climbing that wall of worry. We're actually still in that upward trend, and as we all know, trend is your friend. So whilst it's still trending upwards, we'll stick with it. But let me see if we can navigate this screen share today. Let's just see. So yeah, it was highly expected that we'd have this, this nice Christmas rally, and we're experiencing it very well. So yes, I think we've actually navigated our wall of worry. Let's just see if you can see my chart. Can you?
Almost. I see it down below. There it is. Oh, we got a yield curve. I think I studied this in university.
Yeah, perfect. So if you think about it, if I lent you, Bruce, $100 and I said, I'll give it you back tomorrow, even you probably wouldn't ask me for any interest. You just say, okay, give it us back tomorrow, and that'd be fine. But if I said to you, Bruce, I want to borrow $100 or let's say $10,000 for 10 years, I think you probably want some sort of interest rate on that, wouldn't you? And the longer I'm borrowing it for, the higher the rate you would charge, because you could be using that money for something else that's useful for you. And that's what normally happens with the yield curve. Basically, with longer maturities, there's normally a higher rate of interest. That's the way it normally works. And so you'd normally see this curve go from bottom left to top right. But as we can see, it's slightly different this time around, we're seeing it go from top left down to bottom right. So what we're seeing is that longer maturity bonds effectively are attracting a lower rate of interest. So what that means is that they're expecting interest rates to be much lower in the future. It's meaning they're expecting an economic slowdown in the future moving forward. So it's telling you there's a lack of confidence, that they're expecting economic slowdown. So it's actually one of the best predictors of recession to come. So that means that this is telling us recession's on its way. One of the best signs. In more than 95% of cases, it is predictive and actually does predict a recession. And we could look at lots of other charts just showing how it's worked through previous recessions. And we're going to do a whistle-stop tour today. I'll run through some charts very, very quickly. But this is looking at money supply. And you talked about money in the economy, and you talked about quantitative easing. And the opposite of that is quantitative tightening. And what's happening at the moment is quantitative tightening. We've had quantitative easing following the 2008 financial crisis, where they started pumping money, creating money out of nothing, and pumping up that money supply. The same happened during COVID. But at the moment, they're doing what's called quantitative tightening, where they're reducing the money supply. That means there is less money flowing around in the economy. There's less money for people to spend. And it just means that the economy will be slowing down. So that is another sign of recession around the corner. But do remember, that doesn't mean to sell everything right now, because markets climb the wall of worry, as we've already said. This is quite an interesting one, looking at the GDP against the GDP forecast and inflation growth forecast. So we can see, for example, in the US, we've got the GDP for the next year, looking at, 2023 and 2024, we can see in the US that the GDP is actually expected to slow quite substantially there. And yet we can see these lines above where we've actually got inflation for 2024 picking up. And so whilst they're talking about potentially reducing interest rates, they've got possibly one of the worst things that could happen, and that's stagflation, where you basically get stagnant growth or declining growth here, so stagnant growth and increasing inflation. So you haven't got the luxury of being able to increase rates to stimulate growth because inflation's too high. So that's when you get this thing called stagflation, which is the worst of all cases, the worst of all sort of scenarios. House pricing index, we saw that's what caused the 2008, 2009 financial crisis. And we can see that the house pricing index from 2017 to today is going down and down and down. So again, there's a lack of confidence there. People aren't able to move because interest rates have gone higher, particularly in the US, where you have these fixed rate mortgages. They cannot afford to move house, because if they do, they'll move out of their current attractive fixed rate. They might have got in when interest rates were near zero, where interest rates are now effectively sky high in comparison. And so they can't afford to move. And that's why the house prices are stagnating. And it's even worse in the commercial market. So we look at the ISM Purchasing Managers Index. Again, you can see it's on the decline, which is, again, not a good sign. Number of job openings. Yes, we've had some reasonably good figures, but actually the job openings are declining. And we can see this, since the last, over the last year or so, we've seen a consistent decline in job openings, which is not a great sign. Now, this is quite a good one, the Economic Policy Uncertainty Index, which shows that there's a great deal of uncertainty. And the last time we saw these sort of levels of uncertainty was during the COVID crisis, and we're climbing towards those levels of uncertainty. So this, again, points to a potential, when there's uncertainty, it means you lack confidence. You're not really wanting to spend your money because you think, what's going to happen tomorrow? I'm a little bit concerned. So you hang on to your money, don't spend it. So again, the economy potentially slows down there. And this consumer confidence actually just reflects that. We're seeing a lower level of consumer confidence than we saw during the COVID pandemic. So there are these early warning signs where we're climbing this wall of worry for now. But there do come times when something actually happens in the world to cause the markets to fall. So you climb that wall of worry, but then something happens. There's a trigger that happens. And here's a recession probability index. Now, this is really good because it's actually created by the Fed. It's not something any independent economists have created. This is created by the Fed. And I'm sure you all recognize that big country on the top left there. That is the powerhouse of the world. That actually we talk about when the US sneezes, the world catches a cold. Well, the US the US is that country which actually has what they say here is a 75% chance of recession moving forward. And this is something put together, as I say, by the Fed. So the only other one we see here is the UK. Now, the UK is actually already technically just about in recession already. So we are actually leading the way, but UK is probably looking brighter. And the reason for that is I think that we took a hit when we first moved out of Europe. But I do think that we've opened up a lot of opportunity with trade with the rest of the world. So I think the UK might actually be one of the brighter spots next year. But at the moment, from the a recession probability, UK is high and Europe is pretty high, but America leads the way. We'll just look at a couple of points. So what this all leads me to think is the reason that what happens is we've talked about the US here, which is the sort of reserve currency of the world, as we mentioned yesterday. And the US is, if we look at that, it's on recession warning mode, really. It was in red, high chance of recession. And this is why we're seeing the US dollar beginning to slow down, because interest rates are now not expected to rise further, at least until the middle of next year. That's probably when they'll start to fall. So the outlook for the US dollar is that rates are falling. And so why would people invest in the US dollar when they can get probably better rates of return elsewhere? And that's why we're seeing a decline in the value of the US dollar against a basket of other currencies. And it's been in a rising channel. And I do think when economic trouble really hits, it will get back into that rising channel and start to rise again towards the top of the channel. But for the time being, the risks are to the downside for the US dollar, which is actually one reason why the markets are rising, because whilst the risks to the downside, they're not going to be raising interest rates any further for the time being. So people think, okay, they can probably get better rates of return elsewhere in the stock market, for example, and that's why money is still going into risk assets. But if we do see inflation start to tick up again, as we talked about potential stagflation, or if we see trouble in the world geopolitically, whether it be Russia, whether it be North Korea, China, Middle East, wherever it is, then money will flow back into the dollar, and that's what will cause that rise. And this, I suspect, is where we'll end this climbing this wall of worry, and actually the reality will hit of the geopolitical uncertainty will actually come to fruition, and we'll start to see markets potentially turn to the downside when the US dollar starts to rise. And then finally, we'll touch on Bruce's, what appears to be his favorite. I don't know, I haven't spoken to him about it, but he seems to love Litecoin, and just look what it's been doing. He's been doing really well lately. So we're within this upward channel, ascending channel, which is great because, as we say, trend is your friend. And what a massive appreciation we've had from down here just in the past couple of days, in the past week probably. We've seen more than 10% rise, haven't we? More than a 10% rise, yeah, in Litecoin. Now, if you can get 10% in 1 week, you're doing pretty well. And clearly Bruce was on this trade, and it's looking really promising because trend is higher. We're within an upward trend, and overhead resistance is much, much higher. So potential for more upside. It's not one I'd be jumping into right now personally, because we're mid-trend, we're mid-channel, I should say. So you can see the top channel here, the bottom channel here, and we're pretty well mid-channel. So from a risk-reward perspective, there's effectively as much downside risk to this trade as there is upside reward to the trade. So it's pretty much 50-50 even trade for up or down. So it's not a point where I'd enter. I would look to enter this trade back down here, perhaps where Bruce did, and I'd look to perhaps exit the trade at the top resistance, this top resistance line here. So as I say, maybe not time to jump in, but if you're already in, it's probably a good strategy would be to hold on to this trade, maybe just lift your stop loss above to put you into guaranteed profit. So that's, as I say, that whistle stop tour for today. And just going back here, here's my Twitter handle, as you know. Please follow me on Twitter because I drop in a few charts every day, which are sometimes really interesting and are proven really profitable. So that's it for today, Bruce. Happy to discuss any, and thanks for listening.
Awesome. Well, there's a lot there, Matt. There's a lot there. Yeah. So first of all, I love these channels that you share there. You put the things in the channels there. You put the different assets there in the channels, and it makes it a lot easier to stomach these trades. And one of the things I always say, they say hold on for dear life, right? Hodl, hold on for dear life. The reason they say that is because especially these crypto markets, but markets in general, they can really do a number on your heart. You know what I mean? You're like, oh my gosh, you're really having a hard time. But if you start to break down these charts, it really helps. So I know a lot of people really enjoy it, the charting, and we're going to, obviously we'll continue with that. And that's how we have Matt join us.
Just one little thing, Bruce. You mentioned about dollar cost averaging. Obviously, we discussed that a little bit more yesterday. But if you look at the various different assets and asset classes, just say, for example, over the past 10 years, dollar cost averaging into crypto assets, particularly the big ones like Bitcoin, Ethereum, if you've just done some dollar cost averaging, buying maybe every 6 months or monthly, just a little bit after your monthly paycheck, every single month into these assets, you'd have had a much, in terms of X multiple returns by investing into cryptocurrency than any other asset class. It doesn't mean you should put everything into one asset, because we believe also in diversification. That is the key to success long term. But if you have spare cash, a proportion of it, it would probably be appropriate to put a small proportion into a dollar cost average savings plan type thing into, and you're keeping it under your own control. As you say, it's under your control. Completely under your control. It can't be seized, it can't be frozen, etc., etc. It's decentralized. It can't be affected really by central authorities, which is why it's become so popular. So for those people who've saved dollar cost average, they're many times better off than any other asset class. I mean, even Bruce with his Litecoin, in the last week, he's done 10%. No wonder he's smiling.
And then by 10x, it's even more.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm not saying I'm doing that. I'm just saying possible. It's possible. Yes. So, it's really, Litecoin is one of those coins too. I always talk about the old blockchains that can't be seized. They can't be frozen. They can't be stopped. They can't be taken by court order. These decentralized cryptocurrencies are really what the monetary revolution is all about. If you have a centralized company, and you and I obviously, but the vast majority of people, I know the people listening to us in Texas, the people listening to us around the world, they may not understand that. But when people say beware of these digital currencies, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about the centralized digital currencies. They're talking about CBDCs, the centralized banking digital currencies. These currencies that are basically just the bank. And then the other part about those is it doesn't mean they're all bad. Okay, it just means that they can be stopped, they can be frozen, they can be seized, and they can be taken by court order. And so they're different. But your money is like that anyway. So it's not something to really be scared of. Most of your money is digital. You get your money from work and it's auto drafted into your account. Or even if you get a check, what do? You go put the check in the bank, right? I mean, they don't pay you cash. Maybe you go cash it in, but if you're making a lot of money, you don't. It goes into your bank. So your money's already digital. And so that's that. But if you take Litecoin, you take Global Boost, you take Bitcoin, you take these decentralized currencies that don't have a central form of control. Again, I walked away from Global Boost totally 2 or 3 times, completely walked away. I came back. People were still mining it and they were still trading it for Bitcoin. I mean, much to my surprise, at least one of the times, I couldn't believe it really. But these things are alive. They are alive. And, things come, we have this is something new that the world has never seen before. And so anyway, Litecoin is one of those, and I am a big fan. I think it's great. I think that the $300 all-time high should have been a lot higher. I think it'll go a lot higher than that. I think, Charlie Lee is, he's a friend. We're not great friends, but we're friends. And he's a great guy. And the SEC scared the heck out of all of us way back in the day. And they told us, you guys can't own a lot. If you own a lot of that crypto, then you're a security. You're not decentralized cryptocurrency if you own a lot of it. And so a lot of people got mad at him, and he unloaded on it. But guys, he really had no choice. I didn't blame him. I understood what was going on. I actually saw him in Vegas shortly afterwards. Of course, he was feeling pretty rich at the moment, which sure he still probably is. But I think that the all-time high for Litecoin, it's going to blow past that. I think it's worth a lot more than that. Litecoin is basically accepted everywhere Bitcoin is accepted. Almost everywhere that accepts Bitcoin also accepts Litecoin.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt these things have a real use case. I mean, people say, what's the value behind them? Well, they're actually useful. Unlike a lot of other, assets, they have real uses. So when we used to do international business, a lot more international business, making payments around the world, doing that payment through the fiat system with the banks is very expensive. They charge commissions, they charge transfer fees, and then it still takes sometimes a day or a couple of days to get the money across, to wherever it might be, Australia, it might be America even. And it takes time till you know the money's there, and we pay for some development work in America, and they say, oh, we haven't got it yet, we can't get started. But now I can press the button with Litecoin, and I can actually see on the blockchain that they've received it, that almost that very moment, and they need to get to work straight away. So it actually makes business more efficient. So it's actually a big step up in productivity. And there's lots of different use cases for cryptocurrencies, which are still being developed. It's still an area of innovation. And because it's an area of innovation, and there's things like the new technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning are all being interwoven into this new technology, it makes it really exciting. And, we might go through some hurdles and some obstacles along the way, as Bitcoin has. It hasn't gone a straight line upwards. It's had all sorts of obstacles and probably will still have. But overall, as we say, dollar cost averaging over a term, it's a really exciting area to be in, and probably would be a mistake to exclude them from your portfolio.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny you talk about the way business is done. I mean, I remember when I really started doing a lot of business, and going around the world and speaking, and maybe I would represent a brand or something like that. And yeah, I mean, it's so fast. And back then, the favorite on paying people was Ethereum. And so Ethereum was one of my big winners because everybody was paying everybody in Ethereum, and a lot of the developers and the different companies had gotten paid in Ethereum when Ethereum was a lot less. So why not unload the Ethereum, right? They got Ethereum at $60. It was now $120 or whatever, or less, whatever the numbers were. So why not pay? You're paying half, right? And then we would get, and it was so much easier to make the deal. So you didn't talk in dollars anymore. You just talked in Ethereum coins. Well, that'll be 60 Ethereum, or that'll be 10 Ethereum, or that'll be 100 Ethereum. And it made it easier. It made it so much easier to close deals. And it was so fast. And they would send it or they wouldn't send it. There was no, I'm waiting for the wire. Oh, there was no, oh, it's coming, guys. No, like you either sent it or you didn't send it. Oh, you need to wait till you get to your desk to send it. Okay, great. Hey, I didn't get it yet. Did you send it? Okay. And so it changed everything. And actually it's been interesting. And I know I rail against the banks all the time, right? Because the central banking system is really what is running our governments across the world. And people are starting to wake up, guys like myself running around the world. The henny penny, the sky is falling, but it is, guys. Our governments are being run, not by us, but they're being run by the central banks. But it was almost been surprising for me over the last decade that they didn't become insolvent because it took so much of a slice of the pie away from them. You could send $500,000 across the wherever with the click of a button, and it was peanuts. I mean, it was nothing really. So that was really interesting. So a couple of things I wanted to talk about that you mentioned, Matt, because of course, very important stuff. So one, the housing market, the three things I really wanted to touch on was the commercial markets, the housing market, and the tightening of the money supply. So the housing market is exactly like you say here in the US. I feel so bad for the young people that don't already own a home and didn't lock in a rate or have it paid for. Because if you want to buy a home right now, it makes you cry, because the money supply, and this is where I wanted to come back to the money supply too, because the money supply is still very high. I understand they're trying to tighten it now, but it's still very high, and so the prices have continued to go up. And the kids are sitting there, these young millennials and I don't know what it's called, the generation younger than that, the Zoomers, I think, or something. But that's a great name. But they're looking, they're okay, well, the prices will come down and the interest rates are so high now, and I'll just wait. And so they've been waiting for a few years, and they're looking, but the prices aren't going down. The prices are just going up. Why? Because I think that we're in this point in the history of our fiat currency where we can't really do much tightening. I think we still have to just keep printing in order to save ourselves and to get out of the try to pay off the debt, which is what you mentioned over the last week or so. But yeah, the housing prices, it's just continued to go up. If I had to buy a house right now, I think I would just rent for a little while. But then you say, well, wait, if the prices are still going up, then how do I get out of this mess? And interest rates, yeah, okay, they come out, the Fed, and it's dovish, as they say. It's dovish, right? That's how they say it now, instead of hawkish. Hawkish means rates are going higher. Dovish means, that. And then we'll touch on the commercial markets a little bit later.
But think about that, Bruce. Just, we're talking about growth rates which are declining at the moment, and we're talking about inflation rates still above 3%. And the target for the Fed is supposed to be 2%, and yet they're not raising rates. And we've said before, why are they not raising rates? Because they want to inflate the debt away. But what it's actually doing, the big problem of what it's really doing, is it's taking money out of ordinary people's pockets. If the growth rate is slowing and inflation rate is higher than the growth rate, in real terms,
exactly right. Taking the money. Exactly. And that's by design. They're doing it on purpose. They're taking the money from you. They're not, the guys with the millions and hundreds of millions of dollars are fine, but they're taking the money from the actual people who are going to the 9-to-5er and wondering how they're going to pay this extra money because the bills keep getting higher.
Yeah, and you're right. It's actually just a reallocation of money, but unfortunately, it's away from ordinary people and it's to the wealthy, because they're the ones who will pick up the assets when the prices fall. And as I think you mentioned yesterday or the day before, about, in the 1930s, the 29 crash, that money actually came out of ordinary people's pockets. And yes, some of the wealthy were hit, but an awful lot of wealthy people did actually manage to pick up assets at rock bottom prices. And that's what we again mentioned the other day. Warren Buffett said, when there's, this was Baron Rothschild said, when there's blood on the streets, that's the time to buy. And Warren Buffett used exactly the same ethos in his investment strategy, one of the most successful investors of all time. And he was basically saying that when people are fearful, that is the time to buy. Unfortunately, what happens is with the retailers, the ordinary people, they actually are buying when the markets are sky high, as they are right now. But this is probably the time. Yes, we'll probably see a little bit higher in the markets, but at some point that will reverse. And that's when the people with the real money will come in, when everyone's unloading their assets. Prices are rock bottom, they'll pile in. So it's good to make your money, make hay while the sun shines right now, but then do make sure you store some away for when the prices do fall. You can actually jump in and pick up some of those assets and be like some of those richer people. Just try to follow what they do, not what they say.
Right. I'll tell you what, did you see that speech by the El Salvador president when he talked about that? We want to be like you, so we can't listen to what you're saying. We have to act like you, not listen to you. And I'll tell you what, he's selling citizenships now for $1 million. $1 million for El Salvador. I mean, I loved it. I'm really a fan of the guy. I don't want to talk bad about him or El Salvador, but I mean, this place is not known for being a safe haven or anything. You know what I mean? Lots of stuff go on in El Salvador. He's turning it around. Amazing thing. But yeah.
And I assume you can pay for these citizenships in Bitcoin.
Sure, you can pay for the citizenships in Bitcoin. And actually, if you set yourself up nicely with Bitcoin, it might be a really good way for you to diversify. So keep that in mind. That's pretty interesting. Now, one thing that nobody really talks about is this commercial housing market, and it's something that I've been saying for a long time. We have what we call the Dulles Corridor here in Virginia. I'm in Northern Virginia. I know we're live on local stations there in Texas, on TV as well as worldwide. But I'm in Northern Virginia, Washington D.C. It's all kind of connected. I was living in D.C. for a long time, but and then I got married and have kids and all that stuff. So, but this Virginia corridor, the Dulles Corridor, is full of empty buildings. It's full of empty buildings, and as well, DC has a lot of empty buildings too, and as well, New York has a lot of empty buildings. Now, what they've done to New York, and my friend, Lead Pro, as I call him, Randy, he's a good friend of mine, and we work together quite a bit. You know, Randy. He predicted it years ago. He says, Bruce, you know what they're going to do? Said, I know what they're going to do. They're gonna put the refugees in those buildings. You watch. And he said it like 2 years ago, and wouldn't you know it? That's what they're doing. They're putting all those refugees in those empty commercial buildings, but that's probably not very sustainable. I mean, hopefully, we're going to be able to have an economy where we can have more people be productive and productive members of society. That's one thing. A lot of people will get upset about. We'll call it a migrant crisis, but in general, all people want the same things. They want a family, they want prosperity, and they want money and safety for their future generations. And so those three things, and I say this around the world, all over the place, if we concentrate on those three things that pretty much all human beings want, then we have a lot in common. And, those are the situations we're in. So it's up to really all of us to figure out a way that we can make these people productive members of society, because they do want the same things. People want the same things. And so we have to focus on that. But yeah, pretty interesting. I mean, the commercial market is, and then what will the crash look like when there's this much money out there? What will the crash look like? What was the money supply during the last housing crash? What did we do? Do you have some insights on that?
Well, it's actually quite interesting because there are a lot of warning signs out there. So I actually did some talks around the Middle East at the time, talking about the impending crash that was coming. And a lot of people in the audience were saying, why is this going to happen? What's the warning signs? And do you remember those ninja mortgages, no income, no job applications? People faking their mortgage applications, basically. But it wasn't so much the people, they were being led by the institutions. And then they were collateralizing all of this debt, putting them into these collateralized debt obligations and selling them off even to governments around the world. And the reason they could do it is because the misrating, they're being rated as AAA rated securities when they're actually very, very high risk, debt obligations. So it's effectively, there was a lot of corruption going on there. And this was the problem of centralization. When things are centralized, centralization is actually the reason for all trouble and problems throughout history. It's the reason for wars. When there's centralized control and there's just a few people have their own interests at heart, and what you talked about what people want in general, just want their families and a safe home, etc., etc. But unfortunately, there's a few people, centralized organizations that want it all for themselves and not prepared. So I'm not in for communism at all. I do believe in capitalism, that people need to have a reason to strive for something better. But actually, if we had some more decentralized systems, maybe the world would be a better place. And then, just think about it. That's what cryptocurrency is all about, isn't it?
Right.
Decentralized control. So we can get, decentralized governance. We can get, nobody can control that money supply. You've got a finite money supply, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of good things there. And there's a lot of detractors. But who are the detractors? You're talking about SEC. We're talking about centralized organizations that have an axe to grind. They have a bias. And so that's why there's this big movement from the populace behind decentralization, crypto, and just taking a little bit more control back about what's happening with your money, how to spend your money, the control of that money supply. So, there's a big discussion to be had about centralization. And this commercial thing, commercial property, it's a big worry. Because, even the town where I live, town, city, whatever it is in the UK, I see it going downhill and downhill, shrinking. there's much less footfall on the streets because everybody's buying on the internet. Nobody goes to the shops anymore, so there's no reason to rent out these shops. Everyone just goes online to sell their goods. So it's a big change in the economy. So we need to recognize what those changes are. Maybe we can't change them, but as long as we recognize them, then we can try to take them in our stride and make some changes to make it a fair place for everybody to do business.
Well, we're going to do our best, and we're going to come to you every morning at 5 a.m. in Texas, 6 a.m. East Coast, 11 a.m. in London, 3 p.m. in Dubai, 6 a.m. in Bangkok, every morning, Monday through Friday, and talk about it. Matt, it is always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Reporting this morning. Loved it.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Enjoy it. Thanks a lot. Look forward to tomorrow. Take care, guys.
Cheers.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, everybody.
So I feel like this is a really good point. I know, right? I'm going to play an interview that was done by Brock Pierce's lead girl. We had a big event at the Versace Mansion, and Brock Pierce, a friend of mine, one of the first Bitcoin billionaires, he was a child actor. He came and he had not his whole film crew, but he had his film person here. And Hamden Azar gave an impassioned speech, and he talked about a lot of the stuff that we're talking about right now. It's about 7 minutes, and I'm going to play that now because it's so important. And he talks about a lot of the stuff that we're talking about here. And let me see here, and we are. Sharing? Almost?
Yeah, it's sharing. It's loading.
Okay.
Or it looks like it should be loading.
Talk about blockchain and politics and what's it like? Like, since you know a little bit about being an incumbent in Facebook.
That's Nick Spanos beside him.
What is the idea behind
I think it depends on. We're at the confluence of two very powerful trends in human society. One is that people generally don't understand technology. Blockchain especially, most people don't understand it. And that ignorance is something we confront on a daily basis. Now you pair that up with the fact that you have politicians who are in the business of not understanding a lot of what's happening in the world, facing a technology like blockchain that has the potential to radically alter the course of the world. Our friend Austin Alexander likes to say blockchain is the single greatest invention of our lifetime, probably even the past century. The world has never seen anything like it. And the world is struggling to understand what this means. And I think something I've learned from Nick Spanos is that we are entering a phase where we're going to see the largest, most powerful entities in the world rapidly adopting blockchain. And we're already seeing that. We're seeing the biggest banks, we're seeing the biggest corporations, we're seeing governments, we're seeing government bodies, all of whom are creating blockchain working groups and creating blockchain labs. And a lot of people are happy because they think this lends this field legitimacy.
We're justified now.
Yeah.
For like fighting all these years.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Because Nick says that when Bitcoin came to New York, it was something that was done in the alleys. People were hiding in corners and street corners, and they were trading Bitcoin with themselves right behind West 5th Street, right behind Washington Square Park, right behind Union Square Park. It was something people were ashamed of. They were hiding. And the Bitcoin meetup in New York City used to meet at the Whole Foods. That was the one place that hadn't kicked them out yet. And they would come in the Whole Foods. There was a salad bar. They would buy like a $4.99 little box of salad, and they would sit there and trade Bitcoin. And then all of a sudden, seemingly overnight, not even 5-8 years later, the biggest entities in the world have embraced this new technology. But I think we have to be very cautious about why are they getting into this? What are the original guiding ethos of this technology, and how do we protect that ethos? How do we preserve that ethos? Because this same technology that people had thought could free them is actually ending up imprisoning them. That's what we're seeing in a lot of countries in the world that originally were very excited about smart cities. A lot of people are realizing smart cities is a code word for surveillance cities.
Yeah.
It's a city where everything you do, every step you take, every dollar you spend, every pack of bubble gum you buy, every phone call you make is monitored in a central database, and it's being used against you. It's being used to curtail human freedoms drastically. And that's the risk we are all facing. That's sort of the elephant, that's the giant in the room, that this incredible new technology could be used to surveil us and to dominate us like nothing we have ever seen in the world before. So I think we need to be vigilant. We need to stay in the vanguard and remember why we got into this, because it wasn't to get rich. A lot of us got rich. That's great. But that's not why we got into this. We got into this because we wanted to make the world a better, freer place. And that's the struggle we're all in. And we encourage all of you. We commend this community for being at the vanguard of this movement for human liberty and human freedom. And that's the journey we're all on.
Can you name a few things in how we protect this ethos? You mentioned a little bit earlier that we must protect this ethos. Just give me a couple of examples of what you have in mind and how it exists.
I think at the very least, we have to keep telling ourselves these stories of what it was like in the early days. What was it like when we had to hide who we were? What was it like when we had to do this in the alleyways? What was it like when we were ashamed of telling our family members and our friends and our bosses what we were doing on Thursday nights? Is going to Bitcoin meetups. Because like Bitcoin, we heard that's for drug dealers. And a lot of people still believe that. But now all of a sudden, Bitcoin, we heard you become a billionaire doing that. That's actually just as bad, because it hides the fact the reason we got into this is to protect ourselves from governments and from big corporations and from needing powerful middlemen to live the course of our daily life. If I want to buy a coffee from a coffee shop, why should I have to transact with this powerful global banking system? That if I want to transact with it, that should be great, but I shouldn't be compelled to do so. And that's the alternative future that Bitcoin imagines. That's the alternative reality that Bitcoin presupposes. It says that technology should not just be used to surveil us and to control us. Technology can be used to give us new freedoms, to allow us to act in free ways that we've never been able to act before. And I think it's vitally important that we preserve that.
And talk about Nick's work in government and the impact of that. Who would you be essential to?
Yeah, I mean, Nick Spanos is definitely seems like a rebel at first glance, but I think he's done tremendous work for the State Department going back to the 70s or 80s. He gets very he doesn't like to admit it, but he did a lot of Nick does motorcades, he does advanced work. Nick works for the Pope, the Greek patriarch in Constantinople, the ecumenical patriarch Bartholomew, his All Holiness. Nick has worked for him for many years. I think Nick Spanos is one of a kind, because you meet him and you're like, this is a guy who grew up in a garage and he's a mechanic and he also does real estate. Maybe he shows apartments, but that's like not even true. None of that is true. That's just a facade. And you dive a little deeper beneath the surface and you see this is a guy having cigars with Fidel Castro. This is a guy taking Gorbachev on his first tour of North America and Europe. This is a guy who has been really, I don't want to say, not like Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump was just an innocent guy who ended up in world history. Nick Spanos is a legitimate power player who has been in the greatest scenes in world history. And here's a man who he could be sitting right now having cigars in Venezuela or in Moscow or in Washington, D.C. at the White House. But he's here in Miami. He's here teaching people about Bitcoin, about blockchain, because he believes that this is important. This is powerful, and the world needs this. The time is now, because if we don't free ourselves with the blockchain and with Bitcoin, the future is going to be a dark, dark place, and we don't want that. The future is bright. We were born free, and I think we owe it to ourselves to stand up and to embrace our destiny. It's so close. We're almost there.
Wow.
I'm done.
Yeah, man, that was fantastic.
It really was, and it was one of those things. Nick and I, we talked about it a few times afterwards. A lot of times it's the moment, right? And he felt that moment, and so that was, if you could see, that was outside of the Versace mansion. Nick Spanos had an award on his chest that he was wearing. We were very honored to give Nick Spanos the award of the Washington Elite. Washington Elite is a brand that we have had for many years. We've talked about it a couple of times. WashingtonElite.com. We throw charity events. We throw galas. We've done a lot of wonderful things for the autistic kids, for the blind veterans, and other visually impaired people, as well as raised a lot of money and stuff like that. So pretty, it was interesting what he said, and that was if we don't use, and this is something I've said, and then Nick Spanos has said, and you've said, but if we don't use the decentralized blockchain to free ourselves, they're going to use the centralized blockchain to imprison us. And that's really where we're at. And, this guy, Andrew Tate, said it as well on his interview with they had when they brought back Alex Jones. He said, look, guys, people ask me, why don't you just go drive Ferraris and, bow out and just let everything go on? And, this is the war is going on, guys. This is going on. This is what's happening right now. The world's on fire. So you can either hunker down and hide, or you can be a part of it. But you're supposed to be a part of it. You're here for a reason. We're all here for a reason. Every single 7 billion, 8 billion people on this earth, we're all here for a reason. We have a specific reason that we're here. And it's up to you to figure it out. And we can help you if you want to figure out what that reason is and how you make a difference in the world. But you're not supposed to be hunkered down. You're not supposed to be hunkered down. You're supposed to be saving the world and making a better place, making a family, okay, making prosperity, and making it safe for the future generations. And that's how we prosper. And that's why when guys like Elon Musk and these other guys talk about how we all need to have more kids and we need to increase the population and everything like that, that is the growth strategy. That is the way forward. And that's how we win. And that's how we save ourselves. And that's how we save our kids and the future of humanity. And guys, finance is very important, okay? Hard to do without the resources that we need. And the paper money that everybody's thinking is the resources is not the resources. It's a tool. We can use it. You need some of it. But having assets that are not so easily diluted is going to be very, very important. It is very, very important as we move forward. So President Vitt and I went back and forth a number of times this morning. He is President Vitt. He's the president. Okay. So hopefully I'll get him on tomorrow, if not next week. President Vitt and David and I and the rest of the Porter family, we have been friends for a long time. Of course, I got the Medal of Merit from Lieberland and from President Vitt before. So we'll have him on. But yeah, he's President Vitt. I saw they were out there on the island as it was. And I am very interested to get an update. It's been a very interesting year, I feel like, for Lieberland.
Yeah, it looked like they have been doing a lot of work there and trying to settle in and dodging in between people trying to stop them. And the people trying to stop them even came on and took their bicycles away and did things like this.
Yeah.
So he's in there.
I know. Talk about trying to have a peaceful revolution, right? There you have President Vitt setting up a country in old Europe, right there. Yeah. It is Lieberland's. It's recognized by the UN and everything else, and even Croatia has recognized it. Serbia has recognized it. So it's interesting that you have these factions, it seems like, coming in. So it'll be really interesting. We won't go on about it too much. We'll let him talk about it. But I am really interested to have him on. If we don't have him on this week, I think next week we'll be able to get him on. We've interviewed him a number of times. And he's always a good time. And of course, we had him speak at our very first Washington Elite Summit here in Washington, D.C. It was a really whole lot of fun. So, David, I mean, we have again had, I think, another great show. I think one of the best ones yet. We keep getting more exciting and more interesting. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, you really did a fantastic job today. You took it away, and Matthew Dixon's information was par none today. So yeah, great job, Bruce.
Thanks, man. Great job, David. Yeah, thanks. So yeah, Bat was on fire, wasn't he? He really had a bunch of great information for everybody. This is the stuff that we all need to understand. And when he talks about taking the money of the supply out, we're going to continue to talk about that. We're going to bring that home. One of the ways they're doing that is by rate. They raise the interest rates, and that, of course, brings the money out of the economy. But anyway, guys, love you. It has been a pleasure. Goodbye in Texas. Goodbye around the world. We love you guys.
See you soon.
See you tomorrow.
Ciao.
Your voice is powerful. When combined with social engagement, it's a force for change. Decentralized media paired with free speech is the catalyst for an empowered world and a unified, invaluable ecosystem. Join Global Boost, become a champion of free speech, and help to reshape the future of media.